Hi, my name is Valeria Garcia.
Hi, I'm Jane Neiman.
Hi, I'm Paulina Lopez, and I am the group leader. We will be presenting on the book Be Calm, Proven Techniques to Stop Anxiety Now by Jill Weber.
So, the main points of the book are number one, expressing feelings. This part gives people more control over their emotional state. The second main point is avoidance and escaping behavioral patterns that lead to negative outcomes. Third main point is challenging our negative thoughts and creating positive thought patterns that help us combat anxiety. And the fourth main point is progress will be made if you put in the work and use anxiety coping mechanisms that work best for you.
The first main point of the book is all about expressing feelings and how expressing your feelings can help ease anxiety. When you suppress your feelings, that tends to lead to more anxiety. Therefore, expressing your feelings can help ease anxiety outbursts and give you a better sense of control. This is because when you first experience anxiety, you are experiencing anxiety in your amygdala, which is known as the emotional brain. With that, when you speak about your feelings and express your feelings verbally, you are labeling your anxiety, and this allows for emotional information to move from your frontal lobe, from your amygdala into your frontal lobe, and that allows you to analyze that information and provides you with a sense of control. When we do this, we understand what's causing our anxiety, which in turn helps us figure out the best way to overcome the issue. When we need to express negative emotions associated with anxiety in order to prevent overthinking and feeling helpless. By doing so, we are allowing our brain to access that part of our emotions and allow us to feel at ease. This also allows us to keep our emotions not at bay, but it also helps us not suppress our emotions, but keep us aware of our emotions, because too much avoidance causes the floodgates to open, leading to anxiety outbursts. With less anxiety, we are less prone to fewer meltdowns and fewer emotional outbursts. This is because we are speaking about our emotions and allowing ourselves to think logically about them. For example, people often feel relieved after they talk to someone about their emotions, and that's because they are moving that emotional information from the amygdala into the frontal lobe.
For the second main point, we have the effects anxiety can have on your behavior. Anxiety can limit or eliminate any contact that you have with whatever makes you feel anxious. And the two main behavior patterns with anxiety are avoidance and escape. Avoidance is only a short-term fix, but in the long run, it can cause more anxiety. The reason why you want to avoid certain situations is because it may be a trigger to your anxiety and you think it's simply too much for you to handle, but in reality, you can manage them. One way you can try to manage your avoidance behavior is pinpointing your target behavior and work on that to overall reduce or eliminate your avoidance behavior. Escape is different from avoidance. So with avoidance, you dodge and eliminate contact with your trigger before it even happens. But with escape, you do whatever it takes to get away from your trigger once you feel your anxiety come up. A person with chronic anxiety can start to find themselves in escape mode for situations that are actually safe. For example, like family parties, work meetings, or even doctor appointments. Avoidance and escape is a natural response from the brain when you feel like you're in a fearful situation, and both of them can become unconscious habits that you do. Avoidance and escape only starts to become a problem when your fight or flight is triggered with no actual threat. Fight or flight is also a natural response to your body when you feel like you're in danger. It's when you want to flee, or in other words, want to avoid or escape a perceived threat before you can fully process the danger. When you have an anxious mind, your thoughts aren't very rational, and you start to think of the worst case outcomes that aren't very likely to happen. So once you get in your fight or flight response, you have to give yourself time to process the situation and problem solve instead of letting it get the best of your anxiety. Some ways that you can give yourself time to process your situations when you're in fight or flight is taking slow and deep breaths or counting your breaths to distract your brain from creating more anxious thoughts. Do what you fear. When you constantly find comfort in the avoidance and escape behavior, you don't give yourself a chance to stay or even be in that certain situation long enough to see if your anxious feelings are accurate. You also don't allow yourself to learn new things because you never get the chance to discover due to your fear. What you can do to help with this is put yourself in those exact situations that you fear and make you want to escape or avoid to test if your expectations are realistic or if it's just your anxiety taking control. A lot of the time, the things that you get anxious about are things that you value and feel are relevant to your life in some way. So when you start to make your choices in spite of your anxiety, you're retaking control of yourself and your actions. When you get exposed to the things that you fear, it's going to be difficult to do, but in the long run, it will lessen your anxiety and your avoidance and escape behavior. Uncertainty is situations with unknown outcomes, and people who struggle with anxiety and worry have a hard time dealing with uncertainty. The reason why people struggle with this is because their brains can't handle not knowing the outcome. So your brain starts to overthink and make up all these hypothetical outcomes that makes you feel like you know more to a situation than you actually do. When you worry about the bad outcomes, it may relax you in the short term, but it makes you more and more anxious over time. You start to have this tendency that all of your worrying makes a difference. And when things go normal or nothing bad happens, you feel as if your worrying got you somewhere. But in reality, it's just increasing your anxious state of mind. Living your life always worrying about the little things can be exhausting, and it can also diminish your quality of life. All the bad things that you feel like suffering, sorrow, and pain are all a part of life in which you don't have much control over. The only real control you have is to accept that uncertainty is a part of life. And when you do that, realize that your anxiety will start to decrease and you can start to live fully in the present.
So on to main point 3, which is thinking patterns. Anxious thoughts can interfere with our everyday lives and can negatively impact one's quality of life due to fear. Anxiety and fear can prevent us from living the life we want to live. For example, anxiety can prevent us from attending a social event because we think that no one will want to talk to us or interact with us. It can prevent us from trying new activities that we might enjoy because we might think it'll be a waste of time or because we might embarrass ourselves in front of others. One example of negative thinking patterns is worst case scenarios. Worst case scenario is what you think is the worst possible outcome that could happen at any given moment. We can challenge these worst case scenario thoughts by simply rationalizing them. For example, let's say you're running late for work because you're stuck in traffic. Your worst case scenario thought could be that you might get fired because of this. However, you can rationalize that thought by telling yourself, no, I won't get fired for being late because I can simply explain myself and tell my boss that I was stuck in traffic and it was something out of my control. And another way to combat worst case scenario thoughts, Dr. Weber actually mentioned this in her book. One exercise to combat these negative thoughts is to write them down in a journal. This exercise is used to stop you from spiraling. By writing down your thoughts in a journal, you are able to get more in control of these thoughts, and later on, you are able to reevaluate them and kind of dissect them and think to yourself, why am I thinking these? These are not true. These cannot happen. And another way to combat negative thinking patterns is by practicing positive self talk. Let's say you're really nervous about an exam and you're scared you're going to fail. Some of the negative thoughts you might have is that, I'm going to fail my exam, and I'm going to fail this class. However, instead of letting these negative thoughts cloud your mind, you can instead be more gentle with yourself and tell yourself, no, I will do well on my exam. Or simply enough, you can tell yourself that I'm going to pass this exam and pass this class. By practicing positive self-talk, we can get rid of negative thoughts that are, clouding our judgment in our mind. Some of the examples of positive self-talk is telling yourself that I will accomplish my goals, or today will be a good day. So to wrap main point 3 up, your thoughts are not always true, and your worst case scenarios are unlikely to happen. You can replace negative thoughts with positive ones instead to get you through your day.
The fourth and final main point was all about putting in the work and using everything you learned in the book in your own life. By doing so, you need to realize that overcoming anxiety doesn't happen overnight, and it's hard work. It takes consistent work and the right tools. That being said, you need to be able to use tools that work for you, because not all the tools that were given in the book work for everyone. You need to realize that failure is unavoidable. Yet, if you change the way you think about your failures, that's what ultimately determines your success. This goes along with thinking patterns. You have to change the way that you see and change your mindset, going from thinking negatively and being very pessimistic into being more optimistic and being open to change. If you don't open yourself to change, you are less likely to see change and less likely to see any efforts and any anxiety that's changing. You need to be able to see and break your old habits in order to invite new ones. You have to be able to tell yourself that this isn't going to be easy, and that's okay. Your failures shouldn't be a roadblock and shouldn't be a reason you give up. And if you see your failures as inconveniences, you're more likely to give up on trying and give up on overcoming your anxiety. Overcoming your anxiety also doesn't need to be a lonely process. There are people to help you. You can seek guidance in family members. You can seek guidance in therapy or in groups on social media, or even finding a group therapy online where you can meet through Zoom. One of my friends, she is doing group therapy through Zoom, and it's not something you need to realize that overcoming anxiety is not something that you need to do alone. That being said, you also need to realize that when you are anxious, you have a certain way of doing things and you have certain habits that you pick up. And if you break those habits, such as avoiding your feelings or escaping the situation, it's going to be easier to overcome those and finding solutions for those. Doubt, in this case, is associated with giving up, and you need to put in the work until it becomes a habit, and practicing these techniques becomes second nature to you. For example, a professional musician, they had to practice their instruments until playing their instruments became a second nature. That practicing an instrument is not something that they just happened to do overnight. They took years of work, months of work even. So the same can be said about anxiety. Your anxiety can only get better if you put in the work and if you're willing to work through setbacks and roadblocks. The way we decided to rate the book was on a scale rating of 100 and a 5-star rating, or not a 5-star rating, but out of a 5-star rating. I decided to rate the book a 90 out of 100 and 4 out of 5 stars. I did so because although it's a good book and I really enjoyed reading it, a lot of the information that was presented in the book was information that you didn't have to read the book to understand. You could have easily looked it up online or even found like a thread on social media that could have helped you with what was in the book. So it's an easy read, and it's a good casual read if you're looking to help your anxiety and uh, looking for ways to better understand it. But it's the fact that you didn't have to purchase the book to understand your anxiety, and that really kind of set it back a bit for me.
For me, I rated the book 85 out of 100. So not making it a 4 out of 5 stars. I think what I really liked about the book is definitely the various stories that Dr. Weber added to the book. You know, because these stories really helped me relate to these people and made me feel like I wasn't the only one that felt this way, and definitely didn't or made me feel like I wasn't alone with like my anxiety. Uh, I also really like the mindfulness exercises uh, that the book had. There was even a tracker in the book that you can write in about your emotions. So it's like a weekly calendar, and you can write in like your emotions for that day and rate your anxiety for that day as well. Um, there wasn't really anything that I actually disliked about the book. I just thought it was an okay book.
So I rated the book at 87 out of 100 and a 4-star out of 5 because I like how Dr. Weber added techniques and methods because I found them really helpful. And I also like how she added other people's situations and how they dealt with their anxiety. But I also felt like the information she had in her book is information you can search up yourself. You really don't need the book. So that's why I rated it an 87 out of 100. But our overall average for the book is an 87.3 out of 100 and a 4 out of 5 star.
So here are our likes and dislikes and recommendations of the book. So one thing we liked about the book is that the author uses real life stories from her therapy practice, to connect with the readers. I thought it was very insightful to have these kinds of stories in a book like this. It definitely makes the readers feel like they're not alone with their anxiety or stress or other emotions that they may have. Like I mentioned before, there's also useful activities to practice mindfulness. Some of these activities have to do with like breathing exercises, and where you can kind of locate where you feel these emotions in your body. That way, when you do feel that kind of stress or anxiety, you know it's coming, and you are able to practice mindfulness breathing to help you calm down. And another thing we liked about the book is that it's not about curing your anxiety. It's more so teaching you to accept your anxiety for how it is, for what it is, and to manage your symptoms to prevent, like anxiety attacks.
One of the dislikes of the book that was the fact that the author kind of glosses over feeling occasional anxiety and doesn't really give us techniques as to how to overcome occasional anxiety. So the book kind of focuses on anxiety as a disorder, and doesn't really uh, give insight on how anxiety can affect you, like before a big event, or if you're feeling nervous about something and anxious. It kind of more is about feeling anxiety as a mental illness. Another one of the dislikes was the fact that she went over a lot of techniques, but there wasn't really somewhere to go back to, like at the end of the book, like a glossary that had the techniques listed for you. You'd have to go back through the book to find the technique that you liked, instead of just kind of listing them out at the very end.
So overall, our group felt like this book was really helpful. And some reasons why we would recommend this book is because it helps manage anxiety and stress in your life. And it It also offers several activities to practice finding your source of anxiety, and it tells you how to manage anxiety flare-ups in the future.
So this has been Group 7's presentation on Dr. Jill Weber's book, Be Calm, Proven Techniques to Stop Anxiety Now. Thank you for watching.